Chairperson Holloway?
Here.
Vice Chair Dunlap?
Here.
Commissioner Lynn?
Here.
Commissioner Nyman?
Here.
And Commissioner Braitman? Here.
It's nice to have an audience tonight. We don't usually have one. Approval of the minutes of January the 14th, 2019.
I'll move for the approval.
It's been moved. A second?
Second. I'll second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Audience communications. Anybody want to speak? Got any presentations there, Gregory?
Just that one action item that's later on in the meeting. I don't have any presentations. When you get to staff present items.
Okay, I got one right now, staff communications.
Well, it's not really a communication, it's just that I want to say welcome to Leah. She's the new commissioner that was appointed just last meeting by the council. So I know there's several of you have been on this commission before, so looking forward to having some general explanations from our staff to give you a feel for what all the divisions do. So that's all I got.
Okay. First, Tika's not here, so we'll start.
He's not here.
Wonderful.
He's just watching.
Oh, there he
He's
is.
hiding. Snuck in.
Okay, you're up.
Okay. I want to give an update on our last storm. As a week from last Friday, we experienced one of the worst storms in the recent past, with sustained winds of almost 30 miles an hour and gusts of 60 miles an hour. And proud to say we only had one major outage during that storm. It was at Friday night, 11 p.m. It lasted for about 100 minutes. About a fourth of our total customers were out of power. And the cause of that outage was a palm tree prong landed on two of our lines and shorted them, and that was it. That's the only big outage we had during that storm. Also, staff's been spending a lot of time on this new SB 901 bill. That's the wildfire mitigation plan. Just recently, CPUC announced they're holding a workshop on the authority of a transmission owner to de-energize the circuit. They will be discussing that. So how does that impact us? PG&E is our transmission supplier, transmission line owner, and depending on what they deem unsafe, they could potentially turn off our power. We have power solely coming from PG&E, and that could impact us. If they were to, hypothetically, if they were to turn off the lines that are coming to us, the entire city will not have power. So we'll be participating in that workshop. So that's all I have. Any questions?
So in terms of our lines that are out in the woods, if you will, the only one that comes to mind is there's one that goes along the top of the housing tracts. On the south side and west of the cemetery. There's one back up in there. Do we have a line that goes up into Magleo Canyon at all? That's all PG&E up there, right?
We had one line and it was given to PG&E. That was servicing our water facility. But for SB 901, the areas that would be covered would be south of the city, and also the line crossing over to Ken Adam Park, to that area.
And do we have I don't know, whatever plan we need to have for that?
No, so it's a very comprehensive plan, and staff is working on it. And this plan has to be completed by the end of this year.
Are the meetings with PG&E, are those public meetings or are those not public?
So the next, are you referring to the CPUC
Yeah.
meeting? Yes, that's a public meeting.
And they're Northern California?
They are, and I believe there may be a call-in number too. Yeah. If you're interested, I can provide you more info.
Okay. Yes.
Any more questions?
I just have a comment. Tika and I had a conversation about the outages we had because of the storm, and when Ms. Brakeman came in, I gave her a little bit of a flavor of what the benefits are for having an electric utility. The city's had an electric utility since the 19-teens, somewhere in that neighborhood, mainly because PG wasn't interested in serving us, so we had to serve ourselves. But it's served us well over the years because of our ability to provide power to our own citizens and our own everything within our borders. So one thing that Teague and I were talking about the storm, getting back to that, is that I happened to be in Solvay and Buellton the night after the storm, and total dark. It was entirely dark in those two cities. So by having our own utility, we were able to make sure that our citizens kept power when PG&E did a great job of getting power back on, but they have such a big area that they have to support that they had to go back and forth, and we were able to use our crews to get back in service, and that one area much faster than they could have done with some of their areas. So I'm not trying to say bad things about PG&E, it's just we have much more control over ours because we're providing services just to our citizens. So.
And to add to that, it also gives our residents local control of the utility, whereas with PG&E, CPUC is the authority over them. And also, we won an award last year for our reliability as well. It's much better than our neighbors. Just PG&E and both PG&E and Edison.
Okay, Sean, water?
Okay, so since our last Utility Commission meeting on January 14th, the water treatment plant has treated 75.4 million gallons of fresh drinking water. That's put us at an average of about 2.9 million gallons per day. Our daily per capita usage has been consistently below 50 gallons per capita per day for the last 6 weeks as we've entered in 2019. Our laboratory collected and processed 96 routine bacteriological samples within our distribution system, with 0 positive bacteriological samples reported. And at the water treatment plant, we recorded 6.21 inches of rain since January 14th. One of the main projects with our meter shop, they've been going around and replacing and upgrading our 60 W-ERTs to 100 W-ERTs. So just since the last meeting, we've upgraded 50 to the new 100 W-ERTs at the customer meters. We had 16 meters that were replaced, and we had 19 meter boxes which were assessed and had maintenance done to them. which is typically mortaring of the bottom of the box to keep out gophers, any type of wire replacement or battery replacement to the actual earths or the meters themselves. And then in the last few weeks, we were able to coordinate our materials and our technicians. So starting this next week, we're going to be doing our annual maintenance of the water treatment plant for the main sedimentation and flocculation basins. So during this time, we take half the plant offline, we drain, assess, repair any issues, and then switch over to do the other half of the plant. So we have redundant systems, so we're able to keep utilizing the other half of the plant to stay in service continually through the process. And I think that's it for the water.
When are they going to, do they have a maintenance program for the fire hydrants?
Yes, we've got a hydrant flushing and regulating program
Yeah.
that we go through with that's our distribution crew that's responsible for that.
Because there's two hydrants where I live and they're both leaking.
Okay.
So, not much, but they're dripping, out of the stem.
Okay. We tend to, normally we have guys that are going through, we'll have 2 people assigned to the hydrant truck that are specifically doing hydrants, and they do it they have it broken up into sections of town.
Okay.
But we have the rest of our crew that is typically in the crew trucks, and they're monitoring other sections of town. So usually between them and customer call-ins, we're usually alerted to issues like that from the pressure, the air relief valves, the backflow devices, and the hydrants. So get a little information from you, we'll finish and make sure it gets put on the list.
Okay.
Did you get any back from the police department on the crash into the well?
On well number 1 yet? No, we haven't gotten any feedback yet from the district attorney as far as how they're finalizing and moving forward with that one yet.
They kind of indicated it would be in January, maybe they're a little behind.
Anybody else?
I would like to kind of give a little bit of update on well number 1 accident. So coming from finance, the city has a property insurance coverage through a insurance company. And that property coverage covers pretty much every facility the city has within the city. So when I heard about this at the last meeting, I started doing some inquiries, and I don't know why and whatever, but that accident had never been reported to our attorney's office, and therefore it had never been reported to our insurance agent, so that they could, help us with the repairs and make sure they're covered, but also so they can be the ones who would go after the insurance company of the
Perpetrator.
whoever owned the car, however that works. The policy does have a $25,000 deductible that would have been the amount. We're currently, there's been a claims person assigned to the case. I don't know if they're going to accept it because it's been so long since the accident occurred. We're supposed to, under our policy, let them know about a claim within a year of the occurrence. So we're past that right now. But hopefully they've worked with us on several things before. My hope is that they will accept this as a covered claim and reduce the water's liability from the roughly $90,000 to the $25,000 deductible, and then take on the chore of trying to find the money to get them reimbursed because of that coverage. So,
And, even if they wouldn't pay the claim, but they would just take on the effort of dealing with the other insurance company to get our money back, that would be pretty golden. Because they're experienced that, and we're surely not.
yeah, so I have not heard back from them to find out any of that yet. I have been contacted by the claims person, but we've been playing phone tag and haven't actually talked to each other. But hopefully that process will result in both both of those items, getting reimbursed for the cost and getting the person who perpetrated it, whatever the insurance companies do with each other to get that settled, so. And I did have a conversation with our management staff to let them know that this policy is in place, so there have been at least 3 claims that the city's had in the last year and a half on other claims that have been successfully taken care of, and the only obligation the city has had was a $25,000 deductible.
Okay, nobody else? Okay, wastewater.
So there are a couple staff here from wastewater. Doran Mars is here, as well as Julie Moore. They're here for the action item later on, but as you know, the wastewater superintendent, acting wastewater superintendent retired in December. We're actively working on getting a recruitment together. It's been posted to look to hire the next wastewater superintendent, so that way that person can be represented here at the meeting. I have been working with the supervisors at the wastewater plant in that absence, and we're working diligently on starting the process to get the budget information for the 1921 budget together. And I've been listening to some of their concerns about some of the things that could be done differently in the plant to help reduce some of the operating expenses there. And I'm hopeful that we can get some of those things taken care of before this budget cycle is even over. So the plant did have a significantly higher inflow during the storm event, and they mentioned that today they're basically getting back to the normal flow that they would see. It almost doubled the normal average 3 million gallon a day flow, and with the next storm coming in, they expect that to happen probably the same. Depending on how much rain we get, we'll have another infiltration. And that's because, for your information, the system is not built to take stormwater, but because the system is gravity fed and there's no pressure in the pipes, water gets into the pipes just from normal seepage, and it adds to the volume of effluent that comes to us from people's houses and businesses, and it dilutes what's going on, but it also makes it a little bit harder for the plant to process that because of the extra volume. But it's built to do that. It's built to have wet weather flow and dry weather flow, so it's built to handle it. And it did handle it over that storm event, which had some significant periods where a lot of rain happened all at once. So it did what it was supposed to do. That's my report up for wastewater.
Okay, all right. All right, broadband. Rich is not here tonight.
Yeah, Rich has got a commitment, and he gave me a couple updates. One thing I asked him to do was to give me an idea of the number of meters that are recording through the electronic system, and he gave me a report, and I was quite surprised at the smallness of the number of meters that don't report. On the electric side, about less than 150 meters out of our whole inventory did not report on February 11th, and that's a 99.5% success factor, so that's great. For the water division, because the water meters are in the ground, they are a little bit more susceptible to rain and flooding and things like that. So on that day, they had about 500 meters that did not report out of the total, which still is almost a 95% success rate. So what we're trying to concentrate on is looking for those that are habitual non-reporters and see why they aren't, and see if we can fix why that is, if it's something to do with the wiring or the location, as opposed to just something that's not reporting just because it go for chewing through the wire at that particular time, so, which happens. So that's one thing. And then I'll just read through some of Rich's item that he gave me today about, in general, from the broadband side. They've done a lot of upgrades to some of their broadband nodes to the newer software version. They had, just like the rest of the city, they had staff that attended the harassment and bullying prevention training that occurred last week. That's something that has to be done because of the state law, either every 2 years or every single year, I can't remember which. And so those that didn't take that course can do an online course, which is what I did last week because I was not able to attend the meeting. We're in the middle of a conversion project for finance, and that conversion project, the module we're doing right now is for utility billing and cashiering. So Rich and his team, as well as some of the people from electric, attended that meeting so that we can start working on the conversion of meter information, customer information, property information, with the hope that it's converted within the next 3 to 6 to 9 months. We don't want to just convert because we want to make sure we convert the right information. The information that's in our old managed system, some of it is not just data points, it's references to formulas which are not easy to get out of the system, so we're having some trouble getting that information so it can be put into a data point in the new system. So we want to make sure we do it right, and part of that was the customer information system, which Rich and electric and water are somewhat a part of. Rich because of the meter reading component, and of course electric and water because they're the ones who have the meters. Speaking of the network system, Rich's group is responsible for trying to find ways to fine-tune the fixed network. So they moved around some of the collector units to see if they can get better responses in certain areas of the town. So they've been working on that. The water meters, we began that project, I think, probably in the 2005, 6, 7 timeframe. So, and there's about 10,000 water meters in the ground. The early meters that were converted, the reporting mechanism from those units is once a day. And in the time frame that we were doing a conversion project, the company came out with units that report every hour, which is a lot better for leak detection and for customer service. So we have several thousand of the older units installed, and we're working on some certain areas of town to see if the 100 WHz, which is the newer version, could do a better job at reporting where the 60 WHz, the older ones, are challenged. So that's an ongoing project. They've targeted a couple of areas of town. Nicolito Canyon is one of those, to see if we can get a better response from the units that are in that area. And that, one of the benefits of the hourly reporting meters is that they provide a lot better information about leak detection. So the week of January 16th, utilities sent out 107 postcards to people that potentially had a leak in their system because it was reporting every single hour, it was reporting some sort of usage, so 24/7 over a whole entire week. So those were sent out to inform the customers and see if they can do something to get their leaks under control, because one of the biggest users of our water is leaks, and if you have a leaking toilet, the quantity that adds up from that is enormous over a year, and it's something that we don't need to process through the plant and then process through the wastewater plant if it's just water coming in the system and water going in that system, and it's never been really used for anything useful. So it benefits the customer and benefits us. And I had mentioned earlier that the percentage reads on water was about 95%, and for electric, it's closer to 99.5%. And that's Richard's update for today, and that's for that.
Hey Brad,
Mhm.
remembering that your old city had the water meters before we did,
Mhm.
how would you compare our percentage of reads to what you experienced back then? Because I know you were in charge of that.
I didn't do as much analytical review of them from the point of view of how much they were how many they were being read. We also had a person who walked around and read the meters. So we were small enough where we had a unit in a vehicle. It was actually in the transit vehicle. The transit vehicle rode around, picked up people, dropped people off, and did the reads for the various routes with that. And then the meter reader would go out and collect all the rest of them. So I never really paid attention to how many he read. The one thing that we did up there that we did differently here is we started in 2005 installing water meters, and we just got done in 16. So the general idea is that water meters start reporting slower and slower over time, and usually it's the first 5 or 10 years. So by the time you get to 20 years, it's the amount of water going through the unit is not representative of what we're billing for. So in Gridley, where I came from, we did basically a contract to do the change out. So we changed them all out within 120 days. We changed all of them out then. So they're probably at a point in time now where they probably should be going out and doing the same exact thing. So they replaced them all out. We're going to be on a cycle where we're probably now going to be changing out water meters that were first installed 15, 18 years ago, so that we can have them all installed again within another 15, 18 years. So, and as Deacon and I were talking, the regulations are changing, the technology is changing. So just that 60 WHz to the 100 WHz is a technology change. There's a whole slew of regulatory changes that will affect our ability to have a system that meets those regulatory requirements going forward. And the fact that you have a lot of time and effort required to replace meters. So it's a challenge whichever way you go. So it's 5 years from now, we may have to have meters installed that you can click a button and turn off. And that's not currently the way we have it set up right now. But if we did, it'd be a very large impact. And we'd have to do it to meters that sometime may be just 5 or 7 years old. So.
Okay. Conservation update.
So Jennifer has transitioned into another position within the electric utility. So she's been kind enough to also help out with the conservation side of things to keep it moving along. She just happens to not be here today, but the conservation position has also been one that we've put out to get a new hire for that position. So hopefully within another cycle or two, we'll have somebody here who can replace, or at least fill that position. I'm not sure you can replace Jennifer, but you can fill that position with somebody else. So.
Okay, Keith, you're next.
Okay, for solid waste. Solid Waste has submitted the annual report for electronic waste to the Department of Toxic Substance Controls. Electronic waste, or it's pretty much anything with a cord, so it's your TVs, stereos, microwaves, things of that nature. And this is material that's been collected at the landfill and at our household hazardous waste collection facility for 2018. The total amount Recycled for 2018 was 169,040 pounds, or 84.52 tons of electronic waste recycled for 2018. Also for 2018, the landfill has diverted 5,447 mattresses for recycling and in 2018. Year to date, or not year to date, to date since the inception of the program, we have recycled over 12,200 mattresses from the landfill. And that program started in September of 2016, midway through September. That's all I have for solid waste.
Okay. Melinda?
I got one question. You guys starting on water retention? Stormwater?
Stormwater?
Yeah, where you at on that?
We're,
For the landfill.
for the landfill, for stormwater, we're working on various BMUs or best management practices to improve our sampling, and we're working on longer-term improvements out there and assessing those as we speak.
So is the front runner more ponds, basically?
That is one of the avenues we could look at. We don't have a lot of capacity on the landfill to expand the basins. We do have the lower basins located at Avalon and Olive. The city has one of those basins. There are two adjacent basins that belong to Foothill Estates. We've worked with Foothill Estates in the past and cleaned out their basins of excessive sediment. So that is an option that we're looking at, and that would be something we would have to work with the homeowners association or the homeowners on as well. Another option is increasing the size of our drainage pipe that drains from the landfill out to Avalon. Third option we're looking at is trying to divert some of the runoff onto the landfill around the landfill. That would be costly, but we're assessing those options as we speak.
Okay, before you came on board, there was quite a bit of discussion about tapping off like the 3 canyons or 4 canyons, just those canyons that come into the landfill, because they represented maybe 50% of the water that you're being stuck with. If you did that water doesn't have to be processed, does it? It can just be put into the V Street ditch in effect.
Yeah, if we can bypass anything before it comes on the landfill, then yes, it can go directly to the Megalito Creek or the B Street channel. We could also look into the possibility of basins above there, but again, it depends on whether it's city property or the individual's private property in that area. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, Melinda?
Thank you. The update for Tyler Munis is that we're working on general billing training this week, and the general billing would go live at the end of February. What general billing is the billing for like solid waste or airport. So it has a small effect on the utility system. The next item we're working on is cashiering. We've ordered the equipment. The equipment should be here in 6 to 8 weeks. So that would take us into the end of March or beginning of April. We're having utility billing staff go to Lodi in March for looking how they have electricity there too, and they have the Tyler Munis software system. So they're going to go there to review how they process their electric and other things. We're not going to be able to go live in June for the utility billing. We lost one of our major trainers, and so they have to find a replacement, and we're also having conversion difficulties, but we hope to get that taken care of, and so that's going to be pushed back a couple of months, but we're still looking at this year to go forward with that. That's all I have in the billing system. We are starting to work on getting items out for the budget. The departments are working on narratives and other things, and because it's a new system, we haven't pushed out anything from Munis yet, but we're trying to get that going in a couple weeks. That's all I have.
Good. Anybody have any questions? Okay, new business, seating of new appointees. So, we only have one new appointee.
Well, technically, he's new.
Yeah.
Robert and Leah. So,
I think I'm new too.
yeah, but you've been here forever.
No, I haven't. But
Jerry-
my term expired December 31st, and then I was
Okay,
reappointed.
and then Jerry Nyman, so we have 3 new ones. And then, so everybody know everybody? All right,
So we have basically the certificate of appointment. Is that for all 3 of them? There's one for Jerry, one for Robert. Do we have the one for you? Yeah.
State just gave me those.
Okay. I know you worked with Stacy earlier in the week, so,
Yeah, and I took the oath.
yeah. So this is probably just coming, yeah. So, I've not done this before, so I
So
don't know
they
if
need
there's
to
a...
sign their form, these 2.
Yeah. So if you pass these down, the top one's Jerry's.
Oh, I
Another
already
one's
got this done.
Yeah.
They already signed it.
They did? Okay. I was looking down here.
Yeah, right there.
So. So you took the oath already. Did Stacy administer it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'll find out why she didn't sign both of them. Okay. If we need them, get them signed later, we'll do that later. I know you guys have signed it, I just gotta figure out who the next person is that needs to sign it and make it complete.
okay, now we're gonna have the elections of officers, chair and vice chair. It's open for nomination.
I'd like to nominate Mr. Holloway for chair, because he does such a great job. And I'd like to nominate Mr. Nyman for vice chair, because he hasn't had to do it yet. And you know how we are around here, we pick on the next person in order. So you can guess who's gonna be the next one that gets nominated. And I need a second.
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that Mr. Holloway is the chair and Mr. Nyman is vice chair. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, recommend to the city council approval of ordinance number 1660-18 related to administrative fines for violations of the sewer system regulations. Action.
This was brought to the commission by a request from the city council when they heard the item in December. So part of the package is the council agenda item from that meeting. The wastewater resources protection technician is at a training, so she's unable to be here for this item. But I will fill in for her. So the original request at the city council meeting was to establish administrative fines for violations of the sewer system regulations. And those fines, in looking at the municipal fee schedule for public utilities, currently the wastewater system has 6 itemized fees. 3 of them are discharge permits for 0 users, class 2 users, and class 1 users, as well as which are annual fees of $70, $765, and $1,532 respectively. So the class 1 users are a lot more, either a lot more volume or a lot more load on the system than, say, a 0 user, which is, it's probably more than this, but call it an office building, an insurance agent. So that's what those are. And then there's also 2 other discharge permits for a categorical user and a categorical 0 discharger. Those are actually not a set fee, but they're actual costs of providing those permits. And then there's also a kind of an ad hoc additional services per inspection, which is also a charge that is recovered at the actual cost. So those are only 6 items that is in the fee schedule for wastewater. What the request was at the December 4th meeting was to set up another set of, in this case, not fees, but fines for the purposes of providing a mechanism to regulate users that are affected by the ordinance in this case. The current practice, and I don't believe it's been used terribly much, and I don't know exactly how often, but the current practice is to refer any of the cases that would have otherwise been part of this to the city attorney's office to prosecute. That seems to be I want to say clunky way of doing it, because it involves an attorney's office that may not necessarily have to be involved if it's something that's a little bit simpler of addressing and resolving between the city and the entity. And the purpose of this is not necessarily to go charge everybody for fines. It's to set up a process so that the wastewater division can actively look for issues that are affecting the system and work with those entities that are causing it to try to resolve it so that everybody involved is better off. And the ultimate purpose of it is to help keep the system safe and to keep us within our permits for discharging into a river of the United States. And I said that kind of because the San Ynez River, except for this time of year, typically doesn't run. But from the point of view of the United States, it's a navigable waterway, which means we have to have a higher level of permitting to allow us to do that. So there are some agencies within 100 miles of us who discharge to the ocean, so they don't have the same type of permit that we do, because they don't discharge into a river, and they discharge into the ocean, and it's a different permit and a different level of permitting that they require. So getting back to the original item, the recommendation was to establish some administrative fines for violations to allow for the implementation of the ordinance as attached. The background of it talked about the various regulation requirements to connect to and use the city's water system and those wastewater system. And I'm not going to read through the whole entire thing, but it allows for the collection of direct costs or reimbursement of any fines imposed upon it. upon the city. I guess backing up a little bit, we have the ordinance that outlines in our municipal code, section 13, which addresses all of our wastewater requirements. That was first issued, I think, in 1963. So it's had a long history, and it's what we had to do in 2004 is to upgrade our sewer facility because of not meeting some of our requirements, and the state effectively imposed on us the need to replace our system, our treatment system, with a new plant. And it's physically on the same site as the last two plants, but it was done to meet those new regulations that were imposed on us by the State Water Board. The thing that was being asked to change was the subsection of the code 13.16.450, which provides for administrative penalties to be established and specify the city's wastewater service rates and charges. What the item was trying to do was establish what those fines would be. And that was at the point where the city council asked for the item to come back here for some more discussion, so it would then be able to come back to them with the recommendation by the commission of either what was being asked or whatever the recommendation is that the commission would like to do. So I guess I'll stop at that point in time and see if there's any specific questions you might have about what was being asked. And as I mentioned, Dora Mars and Julie Moore are here in case there's some questions that I can't answer, because you were appointed 5 days ago and I started this job about 15 or 20 days ago. So I'm new and learning and making sure that I use my professionals to the best of their ability.
So in advance, because I had a fair number of questions, I actually gave to Brad so you look at them before.
I got one.
There's enough there, but I need 10. So Brad, you have my question, so you can do the question and the answer. You can have both sides of the game. Before I can ask you a question, if you prefer.
Well, thank you for providing it earlier today. I had meetings all afternoon, so I really didn't have time to delve into a lot of these questions. And in looking at some of them items, some of them refer back to the February 4th presentation, which is not really part of what the charge was. So on the other items, there are several questions that ask about 15 years of data, which will take quite a lot of time to research, and that few hours that I had this afternoon was not enough to do that. So
and realize when I ask a question about 15 years, I'm not looking for the absolutely precise answer, but more in a general sense of what the past trend has been, so we can determine if there's a problem that we're trying to fix, or if we're fixing something that hasn't been a problem. Because what came to mind, just so you know, is I recall Joe Pannoni giving testimony at a council meeting that he did not recall ever having had to file something on behalf of the wastewater department when he was asked. And that's my recollection, let's say.
and that could very well be true. The issue is not has past practice of not doing something a cause for not doing it in the future. And I believe when I was talking at the meeting on February 4th, the MPDES permit that we currently are under expired in 2017. And while we haven't gotten the new permit, although the water board is working on getting the new permit, we don't know what their limitations are under the new permit. We have been told that there are additional limitations beyond what the current permit has. We don't know what those are. So just simply saying that because we've never done it before, we shouldn't have to do it going forward, knowing that we may have some limitations that we'll have to address going forward. Part of this is kind of the cart and horse. It'd be nice if the water board had given us the permit in July of 17 when it had expired in June of 17, so we would know what the obligations are. But they gave us a letter saying, we'll get around to it, we'll let you know when we have issued it. You can operate under the existing permit. The problem with that is until we know what the new permit says, there's one thing I probably can guarantee is that the new permit is not going to be more permissive than the old permit. So we would have to look and see, it could be as draconian as saying that the levels of X, whatever X being, that you've been able to discharge, you're no longer able to do that. You have to do X minus 20%, or I'm not sure how they're going to word it, but if that's the case, then we'll have to look at our system and see what in our system is causing that and find ways to mitigate it so that we're not in violation of our permit. We're not in violation of a permit right now, but we don't know if the regulations that are coming forth under the new permit will be something we can live with in the next 5 years, which is how long the permit's for, or if it's something we have to address so that we're not in violation of the permit during the permit. So we just don't know. We don't know what that is, but we've been told it's going to be more strict than it was before. In what level, what circumstances, what particular constituents they're saying, we don't know that yet. So I guess one of the things that we could do is to say, let's wait until the permit comes in and then say, these are the things that are more restrictive. What can we do to have our customers address those issues so that the city as a whole is within the levels that are permitted by the permit. So
I think that's a reasonable solution. I'm not comfortable with administrative fines beyond, the council's past action has been to adopt very small administrative fines to encourage someone who was a naysayer, and we're talking like $50 and $100. Because an administrative fine by its nature doesn't offer the same due process that our current program does to someone who's violated some rule. And I'm pretty uncomfortable setting up fines for something that hasn't been a problem in the past and not knowing what might be in the future. I have done a fair amount of reading on the permits, and I spent quite a bit of time talking to Tim Smith about it, and what he basically said was the permits are designed so that you can operate at your current process and give you a margin for error that's reasonable. And the only way you can basically change what comes out of your plant is to change your plant, because the effluent that's going to come in is principally from residences, and you're not going to change it. So I don't know what they could be more strict on. They certainly have the ability to do it, but I would feel a lot more comfortable knowing what they were going to do before we did something.
Mm-hmm.
And I would never be able to support an administrative fine that didn't have a recourse to the city council at a minimum, and certainly not in the amounts that are discussed here. I don't think that's the function of administrative fine. Administrative fine is not a fundraising process for a city. It's something that's designed to create compliance for smaller issues. And you testified the other day that you went out to 28 businesses and all but 4 are in compliance and you're working on them. So I don't see where we have this issue that we're trying to overcome with regard to compliance.
Well, I didn't visit 28, but that was for a whole totally different situation. This is not for those food establishments that were addressed at the February 4th meeting. And as Katrina mentioned in the December 4th meeting, and I think one of the things that may have been tripping people up is that these are not to exceed numbers. It's there to let the people know that we're serious about trying to resolve these things, but we're also serious about resolving it cooperatively with the entity that we're talking with. So by not doing anything with this until we hear more about a permit, it doesn't eliminate the ability for the wastewater to utilize the existing system that's in place to address issues. The concern that I have with that system is that the very first time that they talk to the attorney's office, the wastewater division is charged. So we're trying to find a way where we can work with it within the system. And granted, I think there might be more information that we need to work on, but what we're trying to avoid is having to rely on the attorney's office and the attorney's hourly charges to resolve something that might be something that can be resolved between a business and the wastewater staff directly. So.
And again, I would say, yes, I understand that, but looking at past history, there hasn't even been anything brought to the attorney's office.
And I talked with wastewater staff about that since there is no wastewater superintendent. Part of that has been the lack of enforcement because of either vacancies in the position or just for whatever reason, the positions when they were filled weren't looking at these items to protect the system. They were addressing other things and not directing their efforts towards what is being directed towards. So some of that is just, I have my job, this is what I need to do, I don't need to go down this road. Katrina could have done that. She could have come in and not rocked the boat and not set up these processes, but that doesn't make the wastewater utility better. And then you basically just have somebody who's occupying a spot looking for the next job. And I give Katrina kudos for her interest in making sure that what we're doing at the wastewater plant protects all the residents of the city from the possibility of some fines from the water board. So.
I'm not very comfortable with your characterization of prior plant employees because I've seen what they've done to correct problems in the past, but their approach has been a little different, and my understanding has been that was the way the regional board wanted it, that it was supposed to be a go out and see compliance in a person-to-person way. So I see what you're saying, but I don't necessarily agree with your characterization because I've been involved intimately when I was mayor and on this committee ever since. So, and had a lot of conversations with 4 prior managers of the wastewater plant about some of these issues because they're not new. So I guess from my standpoint, I like your suggestion of setting it aside until we get our permit and then looking at what it is that we need to do, and then maybe in the meantime, you could look at some of the questions I've asked and supply me with some answers and those that would put those questions to rest.
And I guess the other thing is because we don't have a superintendent, if we can get that position filled reasonably soon, then that person can bring the expertise and take another shot at presenting this in a way that it's better for the utility and better for the customers and better for explaining it to both this body and to the council, so.
So my recommendation is that we continue this item until Mr. Wilkie brings it back to us. I'd be looking for a second.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to bring it back when Mr. Wilkie decides that he's got somebody to take care of it.
Or we hear about what the permit
Right,
requirements are.
when the permit comes.
Whenever you want to bring it back, Brad,
Yeah.
it's your discretion.
Well, I'd rather do it sooner than later because this provides, by doing this, it provides the wastewater division another tool so they can address some of the violations that have been discovered.
I just, sorry to interrupt, I'm Jim, the city manager, but something when we get questions like this is not just commissions, but even the council. When there are extraordinary large number of them, and some of them are time consuming, what we need first is a consensus from the commission that says, yes, these are important, we need to have everybody vote on it, if you will, or make a motion. Then what Brad would do is then go to the council and say, or the commission would be the best way is come up to the podium and say, we'd like council to agree to have staff work on these, because we're short-staffed as it is. Anything above that, that's even how the councils work. If a council member says, I want this, and they come to me or Brad or anybody, and it's a long work project, it really has to go through a council request. So this really needs to be consensus of the group, then go to the council. Council needs to then approve, yes, we think this is important enough, and then Brad can then, if that is the case, then he will figure out the timing and who works on it. But that's how it works, not just this commission, but for any of the commissions in the city.
Okay. So
So we need to vote.
we just need to vote, and all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
That's all five. Okay.
And then commission requests, and that was me. And want to talk about the impact fees. I just built a new house, and I had to upgrade my water meter from 5/8 to 1 inch. I didn't bring all my paperwork. I was busy doing something else. But anyway, for me to upgrade my meter from a 5/8 to a 1 inch, by the time I paid all the fees and everything, it cost me almost $6,000. I'm not using any more water than I was using before. The only reason I had to upgrade is because of the sprinklers. I had to sprinkle my garage because the city messed up, and they told me how high I could build my building, and when I turned it in, they admitted that they messed up. So they fixed it, and they moved my garage 5 feet closer to my house, which meant that I had to sprinkle the garage too. So, and I'm not complaining about that. It's just that what I'm saying is, we need to have 200 to 220 units a year built in Lompoc. And if we're gonna go in and start charging everybody for upgrading and the new law says you have to have sprinklers, you're not using any more water. It's just there for the flow. And I just wanted to bring that to the attention of the city. I've been a plumbing contractor here for 50 years, and I just don't see where, I don't mind paying the extra money. It was from $51 to $69 for the meter. Plus I had to pay for the meter, which was $477. And then I had to have it put in, and I bought everything because I can buy everything wholesale. I still had to have it put in because I can't put it in. That's the new rules of the city. Before, it used to be I could put it in, but now I have to get a Class A contractor to put it in. And so I had to pay for that too. And that's not included in the $6,000. So I just think that the city has to, you know, I mean, if a guy's building 100 houses and he has to upgrade from a 5/8 meter to a 1-inch meter on some of the houses, you know, you're talking about $5,000 per house, and 100 houses, that's a lot of money. So I think that maybe the building department should, you know, have a little discussion and get this, you know, I mean, if you were gonna use a lot of water, that's different. I'm not complaining about that. But with me, I'm a 1,900 square foot house with 2 bathrooms, and I use four units a month now. When I lived at the other house before I sold it, I used 18. And so my water bill, you know, is way less, so I'm not complaining about that. But I mean, it's just the upfront cost. It was, you know, I knew about it before I started, but I mean, I'm just thinking that other people, I've got other people now that want to do the same thing that I did, and I'm trying to get their upfront costs down, because before I ever even started my building, I had to tear down an old building because the fire department couldn't burn it down because APCD said it made too much smoke. And but we can have forest fires that last for 3 weeks or 4 weeks. So I had to haul it all to the dump, and that cost. And then I had all of these extra fees. So before I even got started, I had probably $38,000 in fees before I even moved any dirt. So I just that's my complaint.
It kind of seems like the issue is that the impact fee was based on meter size, and that meter size, when the impact fee was created, was based on if you had a bigger meter, you're going to use more water, basically. But now with the new state code of, it was January 2018, but it might have been 2017, with the residential sprinkler requirement, and that kicks in on new construction or on a remodel if it passes a certain amount, is my recollection. Now, a lot of people that would have put in a 5/8 meter simply can't. They have to put in a 1-inch meter, and they're not actually going to use any water. Chances are that the house will sit there for the next 60 or 70 years until it's remodeled again or torn down, and they'll never use the fire sprinkler system. So maybe, and I'm not sure it's within our bailiwick, but maybe what needs to be done in the upcoming AB 1600 impact fee study is to look at these houses that are going to have to put in a 1-inch meter strictly for fire flow, and basically charge them for a 5/8 inch meter, which is what their actual flow requirement is, because the impact fee is designed to pay for the cost of wells in the plant and all those other things, none of which they're going to use because of the fire flow. And we do charge them, I don't know, do we charge a standby fire fee on residential or only on commercial? Only on commercial.
It's commercial.
It's only the ones that have a fire line.
Have a freestanding fire line. I don't know, it just seems like the fee structure was built for one thing, and now we have something completely different that was never anticipated back then.
Well, that's, part of that is the fee schedule was originally done in 2003, and we've not done a new one since then, so it's based on that criteria. And back then it was just the size of the pipe times with a formula, and this is how much you can suck through that pipe, and that volume is what's determining it, not necessarily how much you're actually using, but
I know.
the capacity of it is what's causing the rate to be that amount for a 1-inch meter, 2-inch meter, 12-inch meter, any of those. So.
And, you know, and again, those numbers were tied to the cost of providing the system upgrades, the new wells, the plant upgrades to provide that water service to new homes. So, yeah, you guys are coming up on
See, I think it's all right to charge for the,
no, I mean, Brad, you guys are gonna do an 1600 upgrade.
Actually, yeah, the finance is actually in the middle of doing that study right now, yeah.
So maybe included in the study could be a discussion of the difference between using a 1-inch meter as a 1-inch meter and using a 1-inch meter on a house because you have to have fire flow. That would seem to be a lot more fair.
Well, I think the reason why it's the way it is it's based on a formula that's not, you can't dispute what that formula comes up with is how much they can use.
well, I understand that, but when you just got a house, like I got a commercial building, and I have to have a 1-inch meter on that commercial building because it takes that much water to make everything work. And I'm not complaining about that, but all I'm saying is why do you have to pay the impact fees? I'm not complaining about having to put the 1-inch meter in here. Why do you have to pay the impact fees when you're not impacting anything?
And that's what the discussion we were just having is,
Right.
how do you come up with a fair and objective way to calculate that when the potential out of that meter is different?
Right.
So, yeah, how do you do that? So, yeah.
I think maybe the reasonable way would be to look at what meter size the property would take if you didn't have to have that fire flow, and charge your impact fee based on that, except that the property would need to pay for the larger meter because it is getting that benefit. We don't want to be backwards.
And part of it is that the fee schedule we have right now provides for a 3/4 and a 5/8. If that property you were doing was bare land, you wouldn't even have the opportunity to consider a 5/8 or a 3/4 because the minimum right now is 1. So we're just going forward. The new fee schedule will probably only have start at 1. It won't start at something smaller than 1. So.
And that's what Susan said the last meeting she was here before she retired. She said that they're not gonna have any more 3/4 meters. Well,
I'm talking about new construction, yeah.
I know.
Yeah,
I mean,
yes,
I'm
there's
talking
several
about new
thousand out
construction.
there, yeah.
All them houses out there on the west side of town, they got fire sprinklers, but they can have a 3/4 meter and it's legal. I mean, you know, they got a 3/4 meter because their house, they only
Those are
have.
the 3/4 that you can have a fire sprinkler, is that
Yeah.
was one? Okay.
But that was under the old sprinkler code. Under the-
See, it just depends on, how much volume you're gonna have for a sprinkler system. And,
Yeah.
because in the old days, the sprinklers, you had the volume so that all the sprinklers went off at the same time. Well, now you don't have to do that anymore. That's the new rules.
So is there something you want to come back to the,
Yeah, I'd just like to have the city, when they have their discussion on all the new impact fees, is to think about that. That was the reason that I brought it up.
Maybe you could just bring back something to us that would express that.
It's not helping me
We
any
can vote for
because
it.
I've already paid for everything.
If we voted on that, then you could give it to your team back there and it could be incorporated into the discussion.
And that was the reason I was bringing it up, because I wanted, if we're gonna redo the impact fees, well, that should be brought up, that part of
When
it.
they're redoing the study, also, they can look at what the AWA says and see what their guidelines are, as well as, I don't know, our revenue cost specialists? Yes, when RCA looks at that, we won't be the only city. I mean, every city in California has this
Right.
issue, so why reinvent the wheel to see what everyone else is
Right.
doing, and then we can bring that back. Just to let you know, we're in the process of doing a study. We can definitely bring up the consultant and that will bring the council to.
I mean, you might not be able to do anything about it, but, you know, it'd be great if you could, you know.
I doubt we're the only group here that says, why is this? Because there's millions of other people going through the same things.
But if we can do something that's reasonable and makes the city whole, it's certainly an advantage to us when a builder looks at Lompoc, similar to the shared solar.
Do we need to vote on that?
Well, it's not an action item,
No,
so
it was just a discussion.
I think the consensus and the person who's running the study is here, so I think we've heard it.
Okay. So, the next meeting is March the 11th at 2:19 at 6 o'clock right here. And I have an adjournment meeting.
So I guess last time there was an experiment to do it at 5. Was that something that you guys decided not to do anymore, or?
I don't know.
Well, we did it for 3 meetings, and it was an experiment, because it was his idea. Just to see if, because we really need council permission to do it on the long haul.
Just for his benefit, I was wondering why we were imposing on staff's time like we do. You know, like look at the staff members that are present here that have to come to brief us on the current activities, where, in my opinion, some of these reports could be included in our packet that's mailed out. And so I was trying to, I know the staff is stressed and they have, you know, probably a pretty good workload. At least that's what they tell me. But anyway, I was trying to relieve them of some of the work by not having to attend the meeting. And being new on the commission, I found out that there was a history and the current commissioners wanted to have them here. And so to maybe lessen the impact on the staff, that's why we experimented on having the meeting at 5 rather than having them wait around an hour coming back and attending the meeting from 6 till whatever. So anyway, that's a little bit of history for your thoughts.
And I don't think there was any adverse impact from having it at 5, do you, the rest of you guys?
No, I didn't affect me at all.
Doesn't affect me.
If it helps staff, I mean, that's.
If the
that was
staff
my
wants us
goal.
to be at 5, we'll have it at 5.
So I guess we don't have it, do we have it on the agenda? We don't have an agenda, do we? Could we just do an advisory vote?
We could put it on the March agenda.
Okay.
Somebody said.
Because we have to ask
City
council to
had
change the council
approve it.
handbook.
That's what I'm talking about, if we could take it to the council meeting, first meeting, and
Yeah, that's what I heard. Somebody said that we couldn't keep doing it because they had, the city council had to prove that we changed the meeting time to 5 o'clock.
And the end decision was that we try it temporarily and then go to the council.
so to his concern about staff, like Rich is not here today, but he brought gave me a summary. Is that something that would be, he'd consider?
If you guys are gonna discuss it, then definitely do it as is.
I'm just talking about whether having staff here and staff being here is not a requirement, so it's something that
Well,
could be
see,
done.
when Ron was here, he brought all the staff here.
Oh, yeah.
Ron.
So it wasn't a long-standing practice before that.
It wasn't, but we weren't getting all the true story either from the utility directors.
I think it's pretty useful to have water, wastewater, solid waste, and electric here, because they tend to get all the questions. I love having you come once a year when you give us a financial update. But maybe those are the people that need to come on a regular basis, and then when conservation has something new and exciting that we should hear about and spread the word, then that person could come when, you know,
So,
she's getting ready to pull the trigger and say, we're gonna have, it's gonna be happening, and she could come, but rather than come and tell us soon only, not yet. Maybe that's more to the point. Maybe we can get halfway in between, and
But
then
he
from my
wanted them here
standpoint.
because then we could talk directly to them. That's why he said.
Yeah. Okay,
I mean, does that make sense to you?
Sure.
Ryan?
Yeah.
okay.
So if you want to have it at 5 o'clock, that's fine with me. Everybody agree to 5 o'clock?
Okay.
Because we have steak, right, at 5. Instead of pizza, we'll have steak. You barbecuing every time?
So we probably need to have an agenda item for next meeting to tell the council we want to change it to 5.
Yes, okay.
So we can have a vote.
You see, we used to have it at 7. And then they moved it to 6, and then they moved it to 5. That's how long I've been on here.
And the other thing we could probably do would be to put a second oral communication for the public at the end of the agenda, so if somebody came in late, they still have an opportunity to speak. We could do that on the agenda item, so we could make a change to our agenda too.
So there's a public comment coming up after the
Says
written
public
communication.
comment.
Oh, is there one at the end? Okay, then we did it already, never mind.
And we need another one of these.
Can you take this?
Huh? Yeah. Then we change mine.
I have that on my to-do list, Bob. 'Cause I haven't done it.
Now you want to vote to adjourn?
Okay. I distracted him.
Okay, you can have it.
Okay.
Yeah, I have it. I have one.
Okay.
Okay. You guys can go home?
We didn't vote yet.
Oh, well, vote.
Aye. No, we did that, didn't we?
Oh, we,
So I guess you say aye.
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 I thought everybody said aye.
When was we doing the session proposal?
Actually, I think that was-
Aye.